The air quality index is now okay in Madison today, so I'm going to take the opportunity to tell you about a must-read book. And that book is Taxi Night by the poet Cliff Fyman. Cliff Fyman. Sir, your yellow cab broke down Manhattan Bridge going toward Manhattan. Is that correct? Yes, please hurry. 3 minutes later. I don't want to spoil that bit for you. Long news books. Even the blurbs on the back have a nice arrangement to them. This is a must-read book. What I mean by that is that I think all people could find something to get out of it. People who want something to laugh over or cry over, something to read at length, something to read only a little bit of, read it all the way through or read it in bits. Either way, you're in for a great ride. People who like the contrivance of poetry, like putting it together, the exercising mastery over poetry. And also people who like the accidental nature of poetry, the way the poet is helpless and just receiving the poetry when it occurs in the world. People who like long poems, people who like short poems, people who love beautiful prose. The thing about this book is that a page is so, I really don't know how to talk about this book. I was going to say that like each page is a beautiful poem in its own right. That's an idea I got from somebody talking about the book P Poems. But anyway, you know, in your life you come across books that you like so much that you can't talk about them on BookTube because you worry too much about misrepresenting them and misrepresenting what the book means to you. But I think the obvious solution here is just to make multiple videos. This will serve as an introduction to this book that I really think you should get and read. Like, you know, when I was a kid, I would go to the movies and I didn't care. And then I went to the movies one day and saw the movie Nacho Libre. And I laughed my hind end right off my keister. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, movies can be funny. I remember having the feeling, movies can be funny. And reading this book kind of gives me a feeling like, okay, books can be good. Cliff Fyman worked with, as raw material, things that he wrote and heard, gathered over a period of driving a taxi again, being a cab driver. Then there was a long process of editing this book, and it was edited into 4 parts, each of which you can just kind of read as a part. You can read this book in any kind of way. I read it most recently like in 2 stretches, parts 1 and 2 and parts 3 and 4. What that called to mind on this reread was that parts 3 and 4 have more of the interior monologue of the cab driver. No poem is attributed to anyone, you know? You find yourself like interested in the things that you'll think in your head, like, why am I so concerned as to whether this is like a woman talking about her boyfriend or a man talking about his boyfriend? This book is kind of like reading Walt Whitman, where when you read one Walt Whitman piece, you really like it. But when you read a lot of Walt Whitman at a stretch, you just break down in tears, and it's like this amazing, cleansing, cathartic experience. This is basically just like a more exciting version of that. I recently loaned the book to Thax, and then it was returned to me with the 3-word review. It was fun. But coming from a friend who is honest about what books they like and don't like, that 3-word review is a singing review of praise. Yeah, I don't know how to describe my love of this book. I don't want to give too much away, but I also do want to give too much away, and it's a book of poetry. There's nothing to give away. That makes it sound like the book offers nothing. It offers so much. The book is just 100 pages, 25 pages apart. And each of those parts, I mean, it's just like they have an endlessness to them, and they also have such a brevity. Like you read them so quickly and experience so much. Like I read this book recently, and I found myself like taking care of myself as a result. Like it just makes you think of like life and death and love, etc., in that practical way, where you just start enjoying those things and enjoying the questions posed by them and like wanting to engage with them and like wanting to call your uncle and stuff. Yeah, I think it's like a must-read book because I feel like also poetry is about like what there's the whole make it new thing, and it's always nice to have a book of poetry or anything where you stop thinking about genre while you're experiencing it and you're just having a reading experience that cuts right into your heart, and this is one of those books that does that. I find myself thinking like I should read this book every month. I should just read it every month. You know what I mean? Just read it again every month. Like how William Faulkner would read Don Quixote every year or whatever he said. Surely a testament to the power of this book must also be that how speechless I am in front of it. Like, I don't want to say anything about it. I just want to read the whole thing out loud, cover to cover to you. Although I do think that misrepresents things because part of the like virtuosity of the editing of the book is not just in its arrangement of like pieces by pieces. Like here's kind of an easy example. Like it's not just in putting similar things by each other or like putting couplets by each other or like having having like a certain section be sandwiched between two other sections, that kind of arrangement on the level of the page in the book. But there's also just like the level of the line of the lineation. Like the lineation is such it also just conveys nuances of sound that if I were to read the book cover to cover, you wouldn't get. I think you would probably laugh way worse. I mean, of course, I'd be laughing and crying. I'd be unable to hold it together. But yeah. One other pleasure of this book is the difference in volume between the quiet inner monologues that show up in the toward the back half of the book, and then the direct speech that you hear, the direct address of all of the speakers of all of the poems. Or maybe they're the same speaker, I don't know, like whoever speaks the poems, like those are so direct and clear and they're talking right in your ear, whereas those italicized inner monologues, they will feel like, how in 8.5 at the start, there's like that wind that blows and there's like voiceover that's very kind of stark with and spoken quietly, and it has that wind as its background. It's that kind of feeling, and then you cut immediately to a scene where people are in, heated dialogue. Yeah, this is in my must-read books. I think this is probably in my top 10 books of poetry, easily. Top 5, probably. Another thing I want to say about it is that a book of poetry is more than the poems that it contains. If you ate a sheet of LSD and the LSD had printed on it like lots of cool sayings or something, or like cool designs, like saying that the book of poems is its poems would be like saying the sheet of LSD is just the designs printed on it or something. Because then you take it in and you are kind of changed. And like you can read a book of poems, and you don't just have to be a poet to feel this, is what I'm saying. Like that's why I think this book is a must read, because it's not just like, oh, I read it and then it makes me want to write the poems that of the kind that are inside it. Yes, that also happens, but just as a person, you go out into the world and you're just enjoying yourself more. Like you are just you are more in an essential way grateful for what you're seeing and hearing. Gosh, and if as though the book couldn't be good enough, it has a beautiful essay at the end about the making of the book by Cliff. Afterward, the genesis of my taxi cab poems. And it's like, oh gosh, it's just, I love how you can do a poetic experiment in a place where you work in a certain way, and it can be so generalizable to other people. Like everyone's time is limited by something or honed by something, often by their occupation. And like the poems that you write around that, can really be informed by what you learn from Taxi Night. I think the poems that you write from that little corner of the world will have something in their aggregate to share with other people in terms of method for how they could approach their own work or life. And like this is making it sound like anyone could do this, which is kind of the point, but also Cliff is especially kind and open-minded and comes across in the poems as like exactly the kind of poet I think a lot of people would want to be if they knew about him. Maybe what I'll do is I'll do a series of videos about each part or something. Maybe I'll read again and take notes on each part, and then have like in my notebook, I'll have in my notebook a bunch of notes about that section of the book and what little cool transitions I felt in it, and where I felt the boundaries of the poems were. Because another great thing about constructing your book this way, like I talk about this book, I've started becoming like a stationary YouTuber who talks a lot about commonplacing into tiny commonplace books. And then you go and talk with your friends about how do we make books of poems out of like not just what we find in these commonplace books, but the poems that we make out of those things that we find. What do we do? And like Taxi Night is such a beautiful book to read in this context of everybody like working and making our commonplace books. Like, you know, your book may not have like the exact same amount of fireworks or the poetic kind of, you know-how, or maybe even the kindness that Cliff Fyman is able to bring to his book after, you know, a life spent writing poetry. By the way, this is his first full-length book of poems, it says in the back. But you will make a book that will be beautiful, and I think that one of the things that is going to be great is that the boundaries of the poem, of what is a poem, are really kind of redefinable as you read. What I mean is, you could view this as a poem, you could view these two as a poem, you could view the whole page as one, you could view just these three as one. And so you could, you know what I mean? You can take different sizes of bites from it and talk about why you think that is a poem or something, or what that particular subsection of the book says to you. So it's even fun, you know, from a formal perspective, like you can even like play games with it. I don't know, like it's just a must-read book. I've bought probably 3 copies of it. I have one that is contains an inscription, and I have one that is like this copy that I said work copy, and I have another one called work copy number 2. I've loaned those both out. The reason I'm able to make this video right now with this copy is that I just got it back, you know what I mean? Like I keep on buying copies of this book and giving them to people is what I mean, and I think that could also be a great way for this book to work. Maybe if you and several people don't really necessarily have the funds to each purchase your own copy of Taxi Night, which, you know, like that could be the case. Maybe one of you gets a copy of Taxi Night and then passes it around between all of you. I do plan on passing this book around basically as long as I'm reading. And then having said what I've said, you know, thank you for watching and enjoy your reading, and bye-bye.